Well, welcome to the Hancock Woodwork Shop. Today I'm going to be working on some rolling pins, and I'll walk you through a little bit of how I do that. So the way I get these started is I cut some blank pieces here, 18 inches long, inch and 5/8, a roundish. I want the finish to be 1.5 inches here, and then I just run it through the old router table with the 45-degree V-bit, and I just cut off the corners. And then to get me started on the lathe, you can do some fancy center finding jigs and stuff, but I just guess here and do 4 lines. Hold the pencil. Just get used to holding that pencil, then it'll make a little square there. Those 4 lines get your center mark. Doesn't have to look pretty. We're not shooting to be rocket scientists here. I don't even own a machinist square. Get those spots in there. Line her up here. Get one side lined up. The other side lined up with that hole. Crank her home so she's nice and sturdy in there. Pull your vice grips up to lock it in place. And then what I do, take the piece of chalk, put a mark at halfway, 9 inches. And then I put one at 5 inches and about 3/4, and then at 13 and about 17 1/4. Then you make yourself one of these little fancy things. The right thing to do would be to buy some lathe calipers. I don't have any of those. So I just drilled 1.5 inch hole, half of the hole here, and a 1 1/4 inch hole, and a 1 inch hole. And these are my guides. So as I'm going, I can make my depth cuts here until this fits over, and then here in the middle, 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches, an inch, and an inch on the ends. And then I can just taper them together, and that gives me a fully tapered rolling pin. Alright, what I got going on here is I just cut my little guides here. This one I just cut until I get that right over there, the 1.5 inches, and then 1.25 inches down to an inch. And now I can just take my lathe chisel and just I can angle this the guide here to kind of follow the angle I want to go for. And these aren't just, this is just, whatever looks good, we're not aiming for perfection here, and this is the cheapest lathe chisel I could find. It's got these carbide tips replaceable, so I don't have to worry about sharpening. They're not real great, but they do the job. And then as I get down to my final piece with this walnut, it likes to tear out a little bit, so try to push as soft as I can at that final mount and just get a nice smooth final pass all the way from here down to the end. Let me show you. Now that looks pretty good. Nice smooth taper, a little bit of a bubble here. We can clean that up a little bit more with the chisel here. Otherwise we can get it with sandpaper at the end here. You can see there's tear out. Got a little more tear out here than I wanted, but it's looking pretty good. What you're looking for while you're sanding is low spots here like this, where you can see there's an unsanded part here. Need to get that, so we'll thin this out with the sandpaper. I just got 120 grit here, just doing some rough shaping with it. We want to get this nice and smooth as possible for a taper. And when it's spinning, you can see some spots that need some adjustment. So for example, but there's a spot here where the chisel left a line, went all the way around, and when it's spinning you can see that line going as it goes. And so you can put your sandpaper there and you can hold it with 2 fingers here and hold it taut so that there's a straight line across here, so you got, you know, 5-6 inches to adjust, you know, so you're not out of straightness this way. You know what I'm talking about. And so you can kind of move it along there until that line disappears. Now you're always going to have lines because this is going to leave the lines, but you can tell the difference between the many lines that the sandpaper leaves and the gouges or the high spots that you need to take out, or the low spots, you know, you need to sand through. And then you can see some tear out here, and you should be able to see that as well when you're sanding, when it's spinning. And so you can kind of go until that disappears. And you can see over here there's lots of lines coming through from the chisel. And so I just haven't put much of the sandpaper on this, but you want a relatively rough piece of sandpaper here, something like a 180, 150, maybe even a 120 or 100, somewhere in there, in the hundreds, you know, something like that. And then you can move your way up to a 220 and then a 400, and that's where I finish. So let me show you how that goes. And wear your dust mask for this because it gets pretty nasty. Another thing I forgot to mention. Careful not to stick in one spot because it will start digging in and then it'll get stuck there and you won't be able to move it over. And so you don't want to, you kind of want to be moving as you come in contact with the lathe piece. So don't get stuck there, especially with this lower grit. It's going to get stuck in one spot and then you're going to leave some nasty deep grooves that you're going to have to take out, more material to get rid of those. So. Once I know all my low spots are taken care of, and all my tear out's gone, now I move on to the 220. As you can see there with the 220, I'm no longer shaping the piece anymore. I'm just getting rid of all the grooves from the 120 to 150 sandpaper. And so now I have a really relatively smooth, no imperfections anymore, but I have a bunch of sanding lines from this 220. Now to get rid of those, since the grain's running this direction, I will slowly turn it and just hand sand all the way around. And it doesn't take much. And you get rid of all those lines at the 220 level. Do it on both sides. And then you're done with 220. Now you can move on to 400. This is our final state. Knock off as much dust as you can. And this one we're going to run real smooth, back and forth a few times, and do that same finish hand sand. That's pretty much all you need to do. It doesn't take much to finish this up. If you follow that progression. Now we have a nice smooth taper. Last thing we need to do on the lathe is finish up our end pieces. We want to give them a slight bevel on both sides. Careful not to nick your piece with the edge of your guide here. It'll ruin it. Just want a little bevel there on the ends. We'll plug these a little later so they look nice and finished, Then you can put your decal there, your logo, or I don't know, carve something, put a little design. I don't know, does your last name start with an S? Put an S. I don't know, whatever you want to do. Just do whatever you want to do. Make it yours. Don't put your logo in here somewhere. That's where people use it, on their food. You don't want that. Got a little bit of slippage going on here when it's not tight enough. You know, I need some better points on my lathe there, but just create this bevel a little bit larger than it needs to be, and then I can zip, zip, zip right on the sander there and take that down and flatten it out. This side's not too bad, but I'll do the same. And the rest of it will be taken care of with my, when I do a plug. So, but all you need to do, keeps a little bit of the bevel, and I'll touch that up with some hand sanding. As you can see here, I got all these done on the lathe. I don't know, about 20 or so of these mini ones and 15 or so of the large ones. They all have a hole in the end. We need to plug that. So first, we're going to make some plugs. I'll show you that, this little plug bit. I got the drill press set up here. Set this down where it's pretty much right below there, and I set my tape on the drill bit so that I don't drill too far and I drill just enough. And we're not dealing with precision here. We just need it to be relatively plumb, straight, not crooked, you know. So I just kind of let the drill bit find the hole here and hold it at the bottom so I'm not close to the bit. And just kind of let the bit center the piece by itself. I don't know what the speed is on the drill press, just whatever it was when I bought it. So just slowly let it find the hole. Let it get started there. Straighten it up at the bottom and just go down a little bit here. There we go. Do the other side. So let's do all of them. So now I'm going to show you how to make those plugs. I got this nifty bit here that has a tapered outside blades on it, and it creates a little dowel basically that's tapered. So the genius part of this is it tapers down from a little greater than 3/8 of an inch to a little less than 3/8 of an inch. So you get a nice tapered dowel plug that will fit into your 3/8 inch hole perfectly, because even if your 3/8 inch hole isn't perfectly 3/8 of an inch, a little bigger, a little smaller, it'll just stop when it gets stuck, and that way it gets a nice tight fit. But we're putting these on the end of these rolling pins, which means we're sticking them in the end grain. So the wood fibers are going down with the dowel, and so we want to make a plug that would be similar to a dowel actually. So normally you're going to make your plugs across the grain. You're plugging the top or the bottom of a table or a piece of furniture. This one we're going to put it in the end grain, so it's pretty standard. So let's find a piece of wood to do that. Come on, get up there! Zip, 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 zip. All right. So air hose 9000 there. Take this bit out and we'll put our, where'd you go? Our plug cutting bit in there. Maxed her out. Alright, so we want to go nice and slow with this. You want to go deep enough so that the bit has a chance to chamfer and taper the plug here. And then you can either just put a screwdriver in there and pop these out, or run these through the bandsaw. There we go. You don't want to go too far down or the plug is going to get stuck in the bit. And then this piece is just going to go vroom, 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 and hit your fingers, and it's really going to hurt. So don't do that. Go nice and slow. Alright, I'll show you a problem you run into sometimes with these plugs. This one I got, it's a little bit long, and when I go to put it in, it's a little loose. See, I can pull it out with my fingers. That's not good. You should barely be able to push it in, and I can't get it deep enough because I didn't drill my hole deep enough. So I'm just gonna shave off a little bit of the thinner end, and that way I can it'll fit a little better. It can go in further. So just plugging the ends of these rolling pins here. So you just take a little bit of, I'm using the Type Bond 3 because these will be washed in the sink and you don't want stuff to come apart. Just put a little glue down in there. I just broke off a little shim that I had laying around, and you know, swish that glue around. Now I got these little plugs. You just put those down in there. Do not push them hard. Just push them with your thumb. Take your mallet, just give them a little whack. That's good. That's enough. You just want it to seat well so there's no gap. If you push too hard, this wood, the grains are going this direction on the rolling pin, will just split apart. It's right at the end. Ask me how I know. And just take your rag with some water on it, clean that up. That'll make it easier to finish. And then do the other side. Just put a little glue in there. Tap that in there. Clean it up. Set those aside. In a good 20-30 minutes, those will be ready to go to clean up and finish. Really, just don't over tap it. You know, you don't want this to be splitting apart. You put a lot of work into these by this point. Don't want to ruin them. Don't worry if they split apart. Just put a little glue in there, clamp it together, and pull that plug out. Try again.
You don't need a lot of glue. Just a little bit. Just enough to hold the plug in. This really is just covering up a hole. Little detail. No function to this at all. And then what I do is take my branding iron, and I got my full logo, Hancock Woodwork and an oak leaf, and I cut one of them off and it's just the oak leaf, and I put that right there on just one side. Gives a little bit of a hidden deep brand, and kind of a nice touch. So the last step here is to take this little nub that's coming out there and sand it down so that this is flush, and then you can do your final 220, 400 sanding on the ends. Do your brand, and then just some tung oil, and we should be done. I just kind of sneak up on it. You don't want it to be, you don't want to remove your chamfer here all the way around the edge that you did with the lathe. So you just want it flush, and I just kind of spin it as I'm doing it, just kind of get it perfect in there, and then you can run some 400 grit or 200, 220 on here. You know, take some of the burrs off, and ready for oil. It's always good to put a blanket or something down when you're doing your final sanding. Get some high grit sandpaper here. Maybe this. No, use some of the reused stuff. I grabbed some of the 200 and 400 that I had from when I was doing the lathe work, and just take one, and you want to finish up these ends. Do a little bit of that, the 200, grab your 400, and just kind of get those corners so that they don't feel so rough to touch. And then you're going to leave some grooves on the top, so don't leave those there. Take your 400 and finish that up all the way around. And you could probably do that. You might be able to do this just with the 400. Depends on how bad that end grain is. Just pick one side and try to center it. Don't move it once you start it. Get a good brand on there. I use this pure tung oil, and this one's made by Walrus Oil. Not to be confused with tung oil finish. This Minwax brand here. This is finish. It's not tung oil. This is 100% tung oil. This has some mineral spirits and some other, oils and stuff in it that you don't want on food grade items. Good for shelves and stuff, but not for food grade kitchen items. Tung oil, you could also do mineral oil. I prefer this to mineral oil. Mineral oil never dries. And this will cure, and you're done instantly. So I prefer it to mineral oil. And it's more natural. So mineral oil is a petroleum byproduct, so some people may not want that on their food. So So you just put a little bit on this scrub pad. I just cut off one of these. I just ordered this big thing of scrub pads, this white scrub from Amazon. I think some other people on YouTube do this too. But these are for those big floor washers or scrubbers, polishers. And so you can get a lot of this for a little bit. Pop this middle one out, you can start with that. And then just cut it up with your scissors into little pieces. And I can use this for this whole batch here. You just gotta put a little oil on your scrub pad. And you can pour this into a cup or a little dish or something and kind of dab at it. Sometimes I do that. I don't really have one available at the moment, so I'm just gonna do that this way. Save a dish, I guess. Put a little on there, have a paper towel ready, and just buff it off. Just buff one side off, and then it'll be dry enough to handle. And then put oil on the other side. Make sure to get your ends. And you don't need a lot. A little bit is better actually, because this tongue oil actually cures by coming in contact with oxygen. And so if it's underneath the surface of the wood and it soaks in deep, that oil that's down in the grain deeper will never cure it because it's never exposed to oxygen. Or it'll take a long time, like lots and lots of time. But if it's just a thin layer on the outside, in a couple weeks this will be cured and it hardens up a little bit. So it gives a little extra protection. Obviously it won't be forever, so you can treat these things later with some beeswax and some tongue oil. You can mix that together, or mineral oil, any of those cutting board oils you have at the store. But my wife likes these little ones for making tortillas or doing small things. You could do it for pastries or anything small like that. The big ones, definitely good for bigger items like bread or flatbread or something, or cinnamon rolls or pies. The nice thing about these fully tapered ones is they fit inside of your cabinet drawers much better than those big fat American ones. And these are nicer to look at, a little more ergonomic. They don't break like those ones do because they don't have any moving parts. So this is definitely a nice way to make an heirloom piece for your kitchen, for your grandma, your mom, for your dad, whatever, for yourself. I mean, look at that one. Whew, that turned out nice. Nice dark walnut. It's hard to beat that. Sometimes I like these two-tone with the sapwood in them, but it's hard to beat this real dark, rich color. So this is how I take care of those rags after I oil up anything with tongue oil or linseed oil. If you ball up these rags and throw them in a trash can or something, they will actually heat up and start a fire. So you need to lay them out so that they can air dry, exposed to the air, where they're not going to build up any kind of heat. So I lay them on top of this trash can that has a metal lid, and then when they're done drying, after a couple days or so, I throw them inside, and then that way if anything were to light on fire, the only thing in here are those paper towels. They'll burn up real quick, and then it'll just be contained to this trash can. Well, here we go. We got them all done here. Whole box of these guys. I think this one's definitely my favorite. I'll show you some close-ups here in a bit. But got a good 14 of those and a good 25 or so of the small ones. So let's see here, 1, 2, 24, 25. So we'll do a little math there. 25 times $35 is what I'm going to sell these for. That's $875 in there. 14 times $50, $700 there. So it's a good $1,575 here that of revenue. So I'm probably got about 2 days into this. So that's pretty good. I'm okay with that. And they sell pretty good at that price range for sure. I think they could sell higher actually. I think these could go for $80 to $100, the large ones. And I think these could go for $50, 40, $50 for sure. So, you know, price accordingly to your market. But online, I think that these would go much higher. They're heirloom grade, artisan, handmade. You know, you can sell to that market that's looking for something that's not just a product from an assembly line somewhere, that's made in some small town, some small business, handmade in America. We'll make you some of these. Let me pull you in and show you some close-ups. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you go out there and make you one of these and take some to your local craft fair or your farmer's market and make a few extra bucks on the side. Or just make some for your family and friends. See you next time.